Hello everyone, so today we're going to be talking about all the manga I read in November and December. We're going to jump right in with the first thing I read in these 2 months, and that was the entirety of Pandora Arts, volumes 1 through 24. This is about our main character here. Basically, at the beginning of the story, it's his coming of age ceremony. However, something happens and he is thrown into a thing called the Abyss. There's seemingly no escape from there, but then he meets this girl in the back here named Alice, and some things happen after that. I don't want to say much more about the synopsis other than that, but there are multiple powers at play in this story. There are these kind of families, and some of them are helping our main character here, and some of them are against him for various reasons. There's also this family called the Baskervilles, who are kind of immortal. And just from those brief mentions of names, you can probably tell that this story takes a huge influence from Alice in Wonderland. There's a kind of entering another world aspect, and a lot of the different monsters or other things present in the original Alice in Wonderland story also are put in here. The story is definitely a little bit confusing in the first couple volumes, although I think that kind of makes sense with the Alice in Wonderland motif going on here. But I wasn't nearly as confused reading it this second time as I had been when I originally read the first 2 volumes a couple years ago. So it's not impossible to follow, but it does take a little bit of thinking and time to get into things. So I already mentioned this in my top 5 best manga that I read this year, but I really enjoyed this. The cast of characters is great. Our main trio in this manga has a really great bond, and there are other characters, side characters, who are very interesting as well. So in this manga, you think you know something about a character, and then it can very quickly change, and there are tons and tons of plot twists and turns that happen in this manga. As I was reading, I tried to predict some things, and I just got them all wrong, and I was shocked at every turn. I do think the humor in this is a little bit lacking. It's not that funny, but it doesn't really need to be, because the main tone of the story is kind of bittersweet suspense, and there are many emotional moments in here. Finally, the ending was pretty satisfying. It fit the rest of the story and the tone very well. And overall, a really great manga. I feel like I was kind of repeating myself from my top 5 best manga of the year video, but this manga really surprised me, and I'm very happy I finally read it this year. So the next manga I read also in its entirety, and that was Blade of the Immortal. So I read all 10 omnibuses in November and December. And to be honest, even though I read this and I really enjoyed it, I don't feel like I have a lot to say. It's a gritty seinen manga, so if you hear that, you should already know what to expect. It's also a samurai manga, so it has those samurai things. This one does have an interesting twist, obviously, with the immortality here. Also, lots of interesting characters, a lot of them either morally gray or just straight up evil. I really liked the main villain, actually. He has a very interesting story, and his role in this whole thing is very interesting. I can't say much without spoilers, obviously, but definitely not a boring villain in this manga. I will say, because this is a gritty seinen manga, some things get a little bit over the top. Some things are pretty damn gory that probably don't need to be as gratuitously gory as they are, but I'll forgive it for being a samurai seinen manga. Also, there are some panels, especially towards the end of the manga, that are just so ridiculously violent that I almost started laughing. They were just very over the top, and if you looked at that panel out of context, you would probably laugh too. But even given that, I really did enjoy this manga. It was a very quick read. I wasn't expecting it to be as quick of a read as it was. I also enjoyed the ending. It wasn't really what I was expecting from this manga, but I think it was pretty well done. But that's really honestly all I have to say about this. I'm glad I read it. It's not my new favorite thing or anything. It's not my favorite samurai manga at all, but it was overall pretty good, and I understand why lots and lots of people love this manga. The next thing I read was volumes 1 through 5 of Nabari No Oh. This is another one that I pulled out of the TBR jar this month, or these 2 months. I had plenty of time to finish this manga, but I just couldn't do it. I was ready to drop it after volume 2 again, but I powered through because I'd heard that it gets way better, but after volume 5, I just didn't care what was happening anymore. In this story, there's kind of a main character and a main villain, and their interactions were not interesting to me, even though it felt like the author was trying to do something interesting there. I didn't care. I didn't care for the other side characters either, so it just couldn't hold my attention. I honestly should have gotten rid of this manga when I tried to read it 3 years ago, and all the reviews I've read said that it gets really good at the end, but if it takes me 10, 11, 12 volumes for it to get interesting enough for me to want to read it, then it's not really worth reading to me. So yeah, I know this manga is out of print. I do know that the people who finish it really enjoy it, but I just couldn't do it. So if you're thinking of picking up this manga, maybe read some reviews, but don't go paying super high prices for this manga, because I don't think it's worth it unless you've already read it and love it. The next thing I read was volumes 1 through 11 of Blood on the Tracks. I reread the first 6 volumes and then I continued from where I left off. I don't think I liked this as much the second time reading it as I did the first time reading it. And I think part of that problem is I need to stop listening to people when they start talking about the series, because people say things and they're not technically spoilers, but if you have read the manga, it kind of ends up being a spoiler if you think about things, even if it's not directly a spoiler. So anytime I'm listening to a haul video or something like that, I'm going to mute people when they start talking about Blood on the Tracks, because I don't like thinking about what's going to happen next and not being shocked. I just need to experience the story myself and not listen to what other people are saying about it. So having said that, you can choose to listen to me talk about this manga or not. It's up to you. I can see how this is going to be a prequel manga. It was recently announced that volume 13 will end the prequel part of this manga, and then the next volume will continue into a separate story, I believe. But this definitely feels like a setup for something bigger, so I'm excited to see what direction this decides to take. But yeah, I'm definitely still enjoying this manga. I just need to stop listening to other people talk about it. So next, I caught up with some volumes that I was behind on. We're just going to go through them very briefly since I don't have a lot of thoughts on each one. The first one was Orochi Volume 3. This one was not as good as the first 2 volumes, but it was still okay. Shadow's House Volume 2, we're learning some more things about this house or mansion or whatever these people and dolls are living in, and also some things about the world or other interesting creatures that are in this manga, if that made sense. New characters, new mysteries, new things to think about. Next was The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 12, Side Stories. This is basically just short stories focusing on the teacher and Shiva here as they live their lives, basically. This doesn't add much to the main story. I wouldn't say it gives any answers or anything. They're just nice, soft little stories in between some of the more dark things that happen in the manga. So if you're already a big fan of this series, go ahead and pick this up because it's very nice to read, but it's not like groundbreaking. It's not going to give you a bunch of answers or anything. It's just a cute, nice read. Next, I read A Man and His Cat, Volume 7. Basically, the gist of this volume is that kittens can melt your heart. That's it. That's it. And next was Blue Lock, Volumes 3 and 4. Obviously, just continuing the story. These ones I liked more than Volume 2. And I think we're getting close to wrapping up this first arc, I'm guessing. Also, the art in this, I really enjoy. It gets weirdly intense sometimes. Just the way that eyes are drawn and facial expressions is just intense. But I like it. So yeah, definitely a manga I'm enjoying. And then the last thing I'm going to be talking about in this video, and the last thing I read in 2022, was volumes 1 through 11 of Something's Wrong with Us. This is about a girl who wants to become a Japanese sweets maker. However, when she was a child, her mother was falsely accused of murder by the son of this really famous sweets shop. And then years later, when they're adults, she meets this boy again. He doesn't seem to recognize her, and she decides to get close to him to enact her revenge, basically. So I'm going to be entirely honest in that I was judging this manga based on the covers pretty harshly. Covers like this are not typical manga covers that I pick up, but I had heard that synopsis before, so I was interested in it. And I have Weeb Family Mom to thank for sending me this volume and finally picking it up. I'm so happy I did. This is a super drama-filled manga. I can't even explain to you how dramatic it is. And I really don't read many romance series at all. But if all the romance series were like this, where they're just incredibly messy and dramatic, and there's twists and turns and backstabbing and hanks and all that stuff, then I might read more romance. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. Volume 7 especially, everything after that is a lot more interesting to me than the things before it. The things before it were still good, but once I hit Volume 7, then things started really going quickly, so that's when I really started to love it. I am kind of kicking myself though, because first of all, my Barnes & Noble doesn't have Volume 12, which is sad because I want to read Volume 12 right now, but also this manga is going to be completed at 16 volumes. I didn't know that, I thought it was still ongoing, but Volume 16 I think is going to be released by August of next year. So the entire series should be completed in English next year sometime. But for now, I will just have to wait for the releases as they come out. This is just so dramatic and suspenseful, so I'm really glad I gave it a shot. Again, this is not something that I would normally read. Just from these covers, I wouldn't read it. But this is why every now and then you should try to step out of your comfort zone and pick up something that you think you wouldn't normally like. Yeah, I'll be interested to see where the author decides to take the story, because there are a few directions I could see it going, and I would probably be happy with any of them as long as it stays this dramatic and suspenseful. I don't really mind the direction it decides to take. I'm just here for the crazy journey. So yeah, definitely enjoyed this one. But yeah, that's everything I read in the last 2 months of the year. Let me know if you've read any of these manga and what you thought of them, or what you really enjoyed or didn't enjoy in these last couple months of the year. But that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!